Welcome back, everybody. This is Two Way Tonight, our first episode of the week. Very happy to have you here. Um, where was news created since we last saw you? Well, news was created in an Oval Office photo op that ended about 10 minutes ago, where the president talked about, by my count, a gajillion topics. So we'll show you some of that, made news on a range of things. Second news was made when the vice president not only hosted Charlie Kirk's video podcast today, but had a cavalcade of guests, including many senior officials from the administration and Tucker Carlson, who I would say was not as integrated into MAGA world as his friend Charlie was, but a little bit of a reconciliation over the death of Charlie, murder of Charlie Kirk. And then finally, some stuff related to the investigation came out today, some great reporting on what's going on in the investigation, FBI officials speaking out, the president speaking out. And so a little bit more is being said about the alleged murderer and about connections that he had and communications he had both before and after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. So we're going to bring you all of that. I remain profoundly concerned that America doesn't seem to be able to feel like not everyone, but some people just too angry as far as I'm concerned. I understand a certain amount of anger, but anger to the point of not being realistic about what's happened in the last 30 years is troubling to me. And, if you feel strongly that your tribe is correct, great. But this is all try to take some deep breaths and recognize that 50% of the country pretty much disagrees with you, all of you. And not only disagrees a little bit, disagrees a lot. So if you want to win, if you want to destroy the other side, I'm speaking to everybody now, to be clear, good luck to you, because you're not going to destroy half the country. So still looking, hopefully, to get everybody to appreciate everybody. Humble goal. If you want to be in on the conversation and you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your yellow electronic hand. It looks like a spoiled catcher's mitt. If you're watching on X or on YouTube, please, no smack in the chat. Just don't do it. Peace, love, and understanding. Even now, or as I like to say, especially now, between now and the Sunday memorial service in Arizona, believe me, we'll be talking quite a bit about this. And there's just no reason to put smack in the chat. None. Not here on the two-way platform, not on X, not on YouTube. There's just no reason to do it. Keep it to yourself. Thank you very much. Our guest tonight, Hogan Gidley, former Trump administration official who texted with Charlie, I'm told, the day before Charlie died. Michael LaRosa, former Biden White House official, both frequent guests here. And then Aaron Sibarium of the Washington Free Beacon, who broke a big story this morning. We'll talk about his piece. I'm going to run through some of the news in a bit, and we'll bring in our guests. We'll play some video for you, particularly of the president speaking at some length. And then again, eager to get your participation. And since Charlie was assassinated, we've seen a lot of new people join the platform. Appreciate that. And we've seen a lot of people interested in asking questions or making comments. And we appreciate that because that's what this platform is about. So thank you for that. Again, raise your hand if you want in on the conversation. And I'll start with a word from one of our sponsors. We've got some nice sponsors this evening. First is Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth makes incredible products. You can buy them on the interweb, and we're going to give you 40% off, including their bedding, softest sheets I've ever slept in. Very nice. And of course, shirts, pajamas, all sorts of things. But as you know, I'm a big fan of the pants. The Cozy Earth pants, everything made from viscose from bamboo, whisks away moisture and heat, and just comfortable, and they look great. Wherever you wear them, they look great. So right now, if you want to get any of the stuff, please go to cozyearth.com and put in the code two-way for 40% off. You won't regret it. Trust me, many of you have already done it. And many of you have sent me texts and emails saying, Mark, so surprised how right you were. Not that they didn't trust me, but they thought I wasn't even being gracious enough and declaratory enough. So again, go to cozyearth.com right now. Great stuff, especially the pants, including the pants, 40% off. Built for real life, made to keep up with yours. Cozy Earth, thank you for your attention to this matter. All right, as I said, lots of news made today. Let's run through some stuff quickly. Number one, Sam, the alleged killer confessed over Discord. It was me. Suspect in Charlie Kirk shooting appeared to confess in Discord chat. I'm sorry for all this. Read a message from the suspect's account, according to two people familiar with the message and screenshots obtained by the Washington Post. Washington Post broke that story in the middle of the afternoon today. I read all these things because this program is available by podcast. And a reminder to everybody, if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast on Apple or on Spotify, please do. President Trump talked about Tyler today. Here he is in the Oval Office speaking out, calling him a radicalized leftist person, although he also praised him for his high grades and good ACT scores. This is number 2, please.
Wonderful neighbor, smart guy, great boards, great marks, great student. And then something happened to him over a fairly short period of time. It looks like he was radicalized over the internet, and it's radicalized on the left. He's a left. We have a lot of problems with the left, and they get protected, and they shouldn't be protected. But as you understand, I think very well from the tone of your question. Thank you very much.
Okay. Lot of discussion today in lots of different places, including by the vice president and Stephen Miller with the vice president and the president and his aides in the Oval Office about this investigation that the president says will be launched, perhaps using RICO and other statutes to try to stop what he calls the radicalized left engaging in violence. We'll talk about that. But let's bring in our first guest tonight, who, as I said, broke a big story this morning. Aaron, unmute, please. Aaron Sibarium, Washington Free Beacon, broke a big story today. Aaron, welcome in. Thank you for joining us. Tell everybody about the story you broke. I think we're going to flash the headline up, but just explain what you reported and why it's significant, and thank you for making time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Mark. So the story is about a number of social media accounts that are now under investigation by the FBI for posting things in the lead up to Kirk's assassination that, in retrospect, appear to, or at least could, indicate some foreknowledge of the shooting. Obviously, these posts don't establish anything concrete. That's why the FBI is investigating. It's very possible that nothing will come of it. But a few of these posts really are quite eerie. And in some cases, they even reference the exact date, September 10th, on which Kirk was shot. And they do so, weeks in advance. So the FBI is looking at that. And in particular, I think also investigating whether all of these individuals may have had some kind of links between them. A lot of the accounts appear to have come from these kinds of strange LGBT subcultures. So that's in a nutshell what I broke today.
Okay, great exclusive, and got a lot of attention all day, as it should have. What kind of platforms were these on? Ones people would be familiar with, or more obscure?
Yeah, mostly on X/Twitter, although also TikTok. One of the interesting things is that one of the accounts that had some of these tweets also follows the shooter's roommate on TikTok. So at least one of these accounts was only, 1 to 2 degrees of separation removed from the shooter. We know that. Yeah, but I think they were all X and TikTok.
Okay, Aaron, I'm going to play old person and you play young person, because I don't know the answer to this, and I bet you do. Do people use TikTok for group chats?
TikTok, not so much, I don't think. X, yes, and I think my understanding is that a lot of these guys may also have been in the same kind of Discord networks, and Discord they do use for group chats. So they may not be using TikTok for group chats, but especially it's possible that some of them followed each other on multiple accounts. It's possible that they used multiple social media platforms. I mean, we just don't really know.
Yeah. And where to the extent you're still reporting on the same thing, where does that story go next? Are they still looking through messages between these groups of people?
Yeah, I mean, you'll have to ask the FBI. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing as part of the investigation, but even before my story, it was announced that the agency was investigating some of these organizations in Utah and online that use very kind of militant, largely sort of pro-transgender organizations that use very sort of militant iconography, including pictures of bullets and rifles in their promotional materials. Again, it's probably more likely than not for any of these leads that they're not going to pan out. but there is just a lot of toxic stuff. And I think even if the leads don't pan out, these materials really offer a window into kind of the social media ecosystem that it seems like the shooter was marinating in, or at least was very proximate to. And so I think it kind of illuminates how radicalization could happen. Which is important on its own, regardless of what this investigation ends up finding.
All right, Aaron, thank you. Joining us now, two gentlemen who join us on a regular basis, for which we're always grateful, Hogan Gidley and Michael LaRosa. Michael, any questions for Aaron or thoughts on his piece?
Nice to meet you, and congrats on the reporting. Have you heard anything at all about any investigation into the corporate side of these apps as we move forward?
No, I haven't heard anything about that beyond what's been publicly reported. I do think one thing that's interesting is my understanding, and I would want to be fact checked on this, but my understanding is that Discord initially had made a number of statements trying to downplay their involvement, but now it turns out that Discord did, I think, give the Washington Post, or maybe it was that they gave the FBI. I think they gave the FBI some messages in which the shooter actually confessed. I think the Washington Post reported that today. So, I think there definitely is room to kind of investigate these platforms. Now, obviously, you don't want to shut down free speech, and I tend to be very sensitive to any suggestion that these platforms need to do more moderation. But look, I mean, there obviously do need to be some mechanisms to identify people who are not just saying, offensive things on the internet, but actually are planning terror attacks. Again, we don't really have any strong conclusive evidence that this was coordinated or planned in any way, but I think it does kind of raise the question of how do these platforms draw the line between, protecting free expression and policing things that genuinely do appear to portend violence, not just offensive memes on the internet.
Sure. Thank you.
Hogan.
No, I mean, congratulations on the reporting as well. Great to meet you. I think one of the things that will be talked about now, among so many others following this horrific assassination, will be policing the internet. It's long been a conversation in political circles on what you can say, can't say, hate speech, what violates all kinds of not just social norms, but laws and rules. I hate to be Mark Halperin here, but play a game with me and predict, if you will. What do you think is the logical next debate to have, now knowing what you know, on what we need to be policing, what we need to be looking out for on social media? Do you have any sense of which side of the aisle is going to push for certain safeguards? And if so, what would those be?
Well, what I would have told you prior to 2025 was that it had been the left that for many years was pushing for more regulation of the internet. And I think that has kind of resulted in a kind of radical digital libertarianism on at least certain corners of the right, which isn't going to go away, I think, after this. And I do think if the Republicans try too hard to censor the internet kind of in response to this tragedy, you would start to see fractions and tensions within the GOP coalition. I mean, J.D. Vance had a really impassioned speech today about what happened, in which he, I think, defensively said that, some of the people celebrating Charlie Kirk's assassination really ought to be fired. But J.D. Vance is also someone who has spoken out extensively against deplatforming and internet regulation. So he, I think, almost embodies this tension that MAGA is going to have to navigate. I mean, again, I would just emphasize, there's always going to be an element of line drawing here, but that doesn't mean that you can't draw better or clearer lines. And I think, you should be allowed, as a constitutional matter, this is just my opinion. I'm glad that the Constitution protects the right of people to say really horrible things on the internet, even things that I find disgusting, like it would be great if so-and-so died. right? Um, but that doesn't mean that that kind of speech should be without consequence in the professional sphere. I do think that if people are identified as having, certainly if people post under their own name, right? I support political assassination, and he got what was coming to him. I think it's reasonable for that person to lose their job in at least some contexts. And on the internet thing, I would say, look, the principles of First Amendment law, right? The distinction between just, supporting violence versus inciting it, or saying things that seem to indicate that you may be a member of a criminal conspiracy, right? Like, we already acknowledge that that certain things are not protected speech, or that it's legitimate for authorities to investigate certain acts of protected speech that may nonetheless pretend violence. And I think that if you're going to start, you can just apply those principles to the internet. I mean, it's harder to, but in principle, I think that's the approach I would take, right?
Yeah. For those of you who don't know Aaron's work, he's one of the biggest scoop machines in Washington, and he's a serious reporter. He does not try to break cheap stories or kind of gotcha stories. He breaks serious stories. And if you don't already follow his work on the Free Beacon or on his social platforms, you should. He's an incredibly impressive investigative journalist. Aaron, thank you. Very grateful to you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. All right. This is a complicated episode because I got about an hour's worth of video I'd like to show you from the vice president, from the president in particular. But that would take up all the time. Lots of hands up. We want to get to your questions. And I got two great guests. So I'm going to do my best to manage all this. I do want to show you some of the vice president. But first, I want to hear from our two guests because I've not had a chance to talk to either of them on or off camera. Hogan, I was told that you, as I did, had contact with Charlie the day before he died. And to the extent you're comfortable talking first about how you knew him and how well you knew him, and then what your communication was like, we'd love to hear.
Sure. A couple of things. I remember distinctly being in the White House and Charlie being there at the time with Candace Owens, and they were always around doing things. And I remember kind of some of us sitting off to the side going, this kid is so ambitious, smart, but he's really building something. This is impressive to be so young and be doing all of these things. And we all just kind of were in awe of the whole situation, of who he was, what he was able to construct, the movement he had built with young people that typically did not get involved in politics. And they sure didn't get involved on the Republican side by any stretch of the imagination. As we all know, younger people typically lean left. For him to kind of build this out was always something. I think it can't be overstated how devastating this is, and how big the fire it has lit under so many on my side of the aisle politically. That's who Charlie Kirk was. He was so infectious and charismatic, and people just wanted to be around him. He was funny, very kind. And there were times he had those tough debates. He wanted free speech. He defended it. He wanted to be able to have those arguments and conversations in the sphere of just civil, honest, unfettered debates. He would bring facts to those conversations, try to take emotion out of it. That was one of his things. He began to become even a stronger Christian than he was early on. I watched him grow in his style and his abilities just, right before my very eyes. His TPUSA functions are can't miss, and they are incredibly produced with fireworks and pyrotechnics, all these crazy smoke machines and all these things that made people excited about politics and getting involved at local levels. Again, it's a huge loss, but the legacy lives on. The entity will live on, and I think the movement will only grow because of this. But lastly, I'll just say he was always very nice to me. I had a lot of text messages come in from friends who said that he spoke really highly of me. I didn't know him well, but we were always together backstage at certain things. We were on stage just as recently on a panel at the convention, and Charlie was actually slated to speak at Ole Miss in October, Mark. And I went to Ole Miss, and so I was texting him, "Hey, I see you're going to my alma mater." He said, "Oh, you have to come. We're gonna have a blast." And so I was literally looking at tickets to find out when I could fly into Memphis and drive down to Oxford to be with Charlie. And then this happened, and of course, changed not just my plan, but I think the plan of millions of people.
Thank you, Hogan. Michael, I'd love to hear just your thoughts about what happened over the weekend, what's happened into today, where you see the whole country and including your party now in dealing with this.
Yeah. So just for transparency, I didn't know him, and I have to be honest. Depending on where you sit on the ideological spectrum, even in the Democratic Party, I just didn't know a lot about him. And what I did know was very little, and was that he was outspoken, that my side, my party, would consider him probably more controversial and inflammatory, more provocative. But I didn't really know, I didn't really pay attention to him beyond that. I regret it. And I'm sad because while I am a very close observer of news and politics and events, I've been shocked by the sort of blast radius of this event and this story. And I have learned, sadly, more about him in death than in his life. And I regret my own ignorance in that respect, that I put him in a box, and I didn't choose to voluntarily learn more about him, his skill sets, his aptitude, his personal life, or his background, and also just the amount of things he accomplished at a very young age. But also, I guess what people have talked about the most about him has been sort of his willingness to go to places that others don't always go. And that's something that truly impresses me, because I don't think we have enough of that.
Right. Michael, I love that you said that, because it's very honest, and it gives me an opportunity to say something I've been thinking since the earliest days of this, which is Democratic ignorance about Charlie, even amongst people as well informed as Michael, is a part of the problem we have now. There are three things, and Michael alluded to, I think, all of them, that Democrats didn't know, and still most of them don't know, that are extremely accounts for, I think, some of the huge asymmetry about how people are reacting to this. First of all, how much he accomplished. Building $100 million organization, winning the election for the president by getting people registered and turning out to vote, being on text chains with the president and the Speaker of the House and a million other people to help push through the president's agenda. So how much he accomplished is number one. Number two, how beloved he was. How beloved he was by not just people who knew him, but millions of people who never met him, but interacted with him digitally. And then finally, that he is not the caricature of cherry-picked quotes. He said controversial things on occasion, although some of the things that are characterized as hateful or inflammatory are simply the positions of tens of millions of Americans that just happen to not be consistent with the views of the Democratic Party. But sure, he is not the accumulation of cherry-picked quotes. So all those things, so well known by the tens of millions of people in the red team, not known by very many people on the blue team, I think accounts for part of the conflict we're seeing now. Now, gentlemen, let's play. I just want to play a few things, because I just want to basically go to the community, but I've got to play a few things. The vice president today was extraordinary. I think unprecedented in the history of the country for a vice president to host a show, bring in all these guests, and say the kind of things he did. He was at times emotional, at times very angry. I want to just play a little bit of angry here. He talked, I'm not going to play this, but he talked about the things shouted at his children, his young children at Disney World when they went to visit. But here's this number 8, Sam. This is the vice president talking about the need for unity, an angry vice president. Number 8, please.
There is no unity with people who scream at children over their parents' politics. There is no unity with someone who lies about what Charlie Kirk said in order to excuse his murder. There is no unity with someone who harasses an innocent family the day after the father of that family lost a dear friend. There is no unity with the people who celebrate Charlie Kirk's assassination. And there is no unity with the people who fund these articles, who pay the salaries of these terrorist sympathizers, who argue that Charlie Kirk, a loving husband and father, deserved a shot to the neck because he spoke words with which they disagree. Did you know that the George Soros Open Society Foundation and the Ford Foundation, the groups who funded that disgusting article, justifying Charlie's death, do you know they benefit from generous tax treatment? They are literally subsidized by you and me, the American taxpayer. And how do they reward us? By setting fire to the house built by the American family over 250 years. I am desperate for our country to be united in condemnation of the actions and the ideas that killed my friend. I want it so badly that I will tell you a difficult truth. We can only have it with people who acknowledge that political violence is unacceptable, and when we work to dismantle the institutions that promote violence and terrorism in our own country.
Okay, and play number 6, please. This is Stephen Miller with the vice president on the same program.
Walk me through at a high level, like what you and I have been working on, what the whole administration has been working on to try to make sure that we don't reward and promote this craziness.
Yes, so it's an excellent question. I said this before, and but it bears repeating. The last message that Charlie sent me was, I think it was just the day before we lost him, which is that we need to have an organized strategy to go after the left-wing organizations that are promoting violence in this country. And I will write those words onto my heart and I will carry them out. If people ask me, what emotions I'm feeling right now, this is something people say, you kind of know the answer. There's incredible sadness, but there's incredible anger. And the thing about anger is that unfocused anger or blind rage is not a productive emotion.
Right.
But focused anger, righteous anger, directed for a just cause is one of the most important agents of change in human history.
Charlie showed that. Amen.
And we are going to channel all of the anger that we have over the organized campaign that led to this assassination to uproot and dismantle these terrorist networks. So let me explain a little bit what that means. So,
I've got 30 seconds, so be quick, Stephen.
The organized doxing campaigns, the organized riots, the organized street violence, the organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging that's designed to trigger and incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate the violence, it is a vast domestic terror movement. And with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. It will happen, and we will do it in Charlie's name.
Okay, so a couple things. First of all, right now there's a memorial service on Capitol Hill. Just a handful of Democratic members of Congress showed up. The speaker's leading that. And as we were listening to Stephen Miller there, in my inbox comes an email, not a personal email, but a group email from Gavin Newsom. Subject line, Stephen Miller, responding to Stephen's appearance on the vice president today on Charlie's show. Wake up, America. The reaction from folks like Stephen Miller isn't about crime and safety. It's about dismantling our democratic institutions. Hogan, I hear from Democrats all day. They're really upset that in their view, the federal government's going to be used to enact a political agenda. What can you say to explain to folks what this is about and maybe make them less upset?
Well, I don't know what they're upset about. That's confusing to me. And Gavin Newsom, of course, that makes no sense whatsoever because that's not what Stephen Miller's saying. This is exactly what happens. The left is blowing this out of proportion as though it's going to be some type of militarized effort against law-abiding citizens. What Stephen Miller and the vice president are clearly talking about has to do with people who are perpetuating, planning, executing violence in this country through various means and methods. The organizations that help them, that fund them, that teach them, that train them, this is obviously a problem in this country. And if it gets exposed and it gets brought to light and the people get to see just how problematic this has become and is, we can't keep having conversations about the radicalization of individuals or groups of people and not ask the question, how does this happen? Is it just organic online? Possibly. There are some like that, but some of this is orchestrated. Some of this is done intentionally. And if Stephen Miller and the administration can root that out, I don't know what Gavin Newsom's problem is.
Okay. Michael, I want you to either comment on this or maybe ask Hogan a question. Before you do, a few things. First of all, you heard the vice president refer to an article funded by Soros. That's an article in The Nation magazine that was pretty negative, I'll say, about Charlie Kirk. And here's a little bit of video from Capitol Hill from the memorial service. The vice president, a little hard to hear, but he calls Charlie Kirk a happy warrior. Let's just play just a bit of that ceremony, and then Michael.
In Charlie's own words, he was motivated by love. He believed in the words of.
Okay, you just get a sense of the scene there. Michael, question for Hogan or comment on this thing that has a lot of Democrats upset and a lot of Republicans pretty fired up.
Well, so I still need to learn more about this sort of Soros Ford Foundation connection, and just read more about it. But I don't disagree with a lot of what the vice president said. I really empathize with his passion. My concern is that I didn't see a ton of this emotion from, Team Red when it came to previous acts of political violence. I just think we can't only hate violence when it happens to our side. We have to be against it, whether people are attacking the Capitol or whether they're lighting Elon Musk's cars on fire, whether they're trying to execute a congresswoman at point blank range in the head at a grocery store, or when there is an actual assassination. And I'm a little bit struck that both sides really seem to be having a hard time understanding each other because it's been so, because both sides have been such victims of this. I mean, we do have to keep in mind that the assassination attempt on President Trump, the person who assassinated him was also stalking President Biden. A lot of these cases are not always acts of political violence, but acts of violence.
Yeah.
And we just need to be against that altogether. But like hearing the vice president talk about what he experienced at Disney World reminded me about 6 years ago, actually, when Hogan was in the White House, I think, and his boss, when Sarah Sanders was heckled with her family. And I was horrified. I was embarrassed and I was horrified by it. I actually, at that point, I'm a Democrat and I wasn't a Trump supporter, but I was really, really struck by it and really embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, but was that before or after Maxine Waters told Democrats to make sure you caused a scene, find people in the Trump administration and get in their faces, tell them they're not welcome here anymore? This is the kind of stuff that we view as not just problematic, but extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
And it happens so often at this point in time. And what there will be a tendency for many to say this is a problem on both sides. There'll be a tendency on the left to say it's the problem of the right. There's many people on the right are going to say it's a problem of the left. The data and the statistics, I think, over the course of the next several days, the clips that live in perpetuity on the web, the internet, if you will be played out. And you're going to see a much different situation, I think, on both sides of this political aisle. And for the life of me, Michael, and you and I have been friends for a while, you just said something that was so poignant, and it was, you basically point out we've lost this ability to understand one another. And I would argue in large part that has to do, we don't communicate with each other anymore, but for the tapping on a screen or a Twitter post, whereas that's what Charlie Kirk was doing. Come and prove me wrong. Let's have this conversation. Let's have civil debate. And countless times, people who did not like him, despised him, they still left and everything was okay. No one lost anything crazy here except the debate. This is why I think, to me, people are so enraged by this whole process. There was someone trying to bring this back to have a conversation in public, in a civil manner, and just let the facts fall where they may.
Yeah. So grateful to you both being here. You're both so articulate about this and so thoughtful, and not an uncommon reaction when someone passes a 31-year-old man. Michael, I feel for you the way I feel for everyone who never met him. I'm sad that you never will get to meet him, because you would have such a elevated view of him, even though, again, you didn't agree on stuff, including maybe on tactics. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to run through a bunch of news. My colleagues did a great job preparing 20 more video clips. I wish we had time to show, but there's so many hands up and I want to get to. So let me just run through some things, a couple words from sponsors, and then we will get to you all in short order. If you want to be in the conversation, raise your hand. President in the Oval Office said 100% he would make Antifa, label them a terrorist group. He called Congresswoman Omar a disgraceful person. He gave an answer about the killed legislator and her husband in Minnesota that will enrage the left, about how relatively casual he was about it. Tulsi Gabbard appeared with Megan today on Citizen McCain. If you haven't watched that conversation, I recommend it to you. More anger from the vice president here. I'll talk to you about that. Karen Attiah, a longtime Washington Post columnist, was fired today by the Post for writing things about Charlie that were very negative and in some cases false. And she's very angry about it. And I wish we had more time to talk about that. But she's someone who, well, the White House communications director said the best thing the Washington Post ever did was fire your ass, he wrote to her. And that's reflects the view of many people on the right. The president's event in the Oval Office was about Memphis. He had people there from the city, as well as federal officials, saying that this is where the next federal introduction of federal force is going to go to deal with crime. He talked again about going out to dinner in Washington and being heckled. He also denied a report that he had talked to Benjamin Netanyahu in advance of the Israeli attack on Hamas in Qatar, and said that wasn't true. Continued to say that there's a deal on TikTok. The president talked about his support for TikTok, and talked about the CR. Jim Comey's daughter, I don't mean to say she's only Jim Comey's daughter, but if she weren't Jim Comey's daughter, she would not be famous in this context, was a assistant U.S. attorney in New York who had been fired by the administration, sued over her firing today. And the Dow closed up over 6,600 on the eve of the Fed meeting, where rate cuts expected to be announced on Wednesday. Highest ever, first time over 6,600. We'll go ahead and put that up, Sam, number 21 and then 22. Kind of incredible what's going on with the Dow, which is skyrocketing even in the face of some uncertainty and some negative economic news, including on the job front. Number 22, please. Stock market report brought to you by our friends at the Bahnsen Group. David Bahnsen is a sponsor of the program, and as you can see, everything up pretty big. Dow, S&P, and the NASDAQ. Bahnsen Group, our sponsor. Don't forget to subscribe to David's daily newsletter, Dividend Cafe. It's free. I read it every day, and it will give you insights into the economy. David and I will be talking in the coming days here on Two-Way, where you'll be able to ask David questions about the economy. You can read stuff that's informative, accessible, and funny, not unlike Hogan Gidley. Subscribe now. Go to tway.tv/TBG, the Bahnsen Group, tway.tv/TBG, to get David's free daily newsletter. Gentlemen, one more question for each of you about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And Michael, you first. If something good, not for the Republican Party alone, but if something good can come out of this for the country, what would you hope it would be that could happen? What's something tangible that could come out of this that'd be good?
Something tangible?
Yeah. I don't want some Governor Cox fairy dust of we all need to do better. Like, what's something that could actually happen that would be good for the country?
Well, we had a good talk. I mean, what I think is most likely will be a discussion in Congress about Section 242?
To regulate the internet more.
Yeah.
Social media.
I think that is the most likely.
Okay.
I'd have to think a little bit more about what I personally like to see, but this is a good start. It's just people going on. What I don't like, what drives me crazy is I would like to see a little bit more some more self-responsibility from certain actors, at least on my side. Not to bring up our old employer, but on MSNBC this morning, hearing some of them talk about self-policing and the double standard that the right is setting, really, really pissed me off, because a year ago today, it was, on Morning Joe that they were comparing the presidential candidate to Hitler.
Yeah.
They used the word fascist every hour on that network. And how can they not think they're not contributing to the extremes that we are sitting here talking about today? They are. I received, not this isn't about me. I mean, I received a death threat to my office against me and my family simply because I said the nominee for Secretary of Defense should not be called a white nationalist. You might disagree with him on HR policy, but he's not a white nationalist.
Yeah. Hogan, what good can come of this for the country?
I don't know if you're going to consider this fairy dust or not, but I think Charlie, with his devout Christianity, would hope a revival to embrace biblical tenets.
No, that's great.
There is a consistent effort by many people to remove God from our public discourse. Charlie put it front and center, which is why he never talked about violence, never preached it. Instead, tried to bring out truth, facts. I will tell you, the rage I feel is overshadowed only by the sadness. But it should be noted, as I said, because he is a Christian, what he believed in was a risen Lord, and right now he is in heaven. And for the evangelical out there, for those who believe in Christ, there is some comfort you can take in that, because that's where he's going to be for all eternity now. And listening to Charlie outline so many political arguments with statistics and data, information, charts and graphs, and opinion, it was still the common thread that he loved this country and he wanted everyone to love America. He loved the Lord, his Savior as well. And I think if people would return to something that used to bind us all, which was, we may disagree on politics, but we love America for for what she is. If more people did that, I think we'd be a whole lot better off.
Brilliant. Again, raise your hand if you want to get in the conversation. Word from one more sponsor, and then your questions. Literally everyone I've ever known, with the exception of Keira Knightley and Hogan Gidley, sometimes worry about their weight. Sometimes feel like losing weight would be a good thing, but you don't want to yo-yo. You don't want to yo-yo. You don't want to lose a lot of weight, gain a lot of weight. That's called weight cycling. And as anybody but Keira Knightley or Hogan Gidley could tell you, that's no good. You don't want to do that. So bottom line, people need a way to stop weight cycling, but still lose weight. And here's one way. Use non-prescription lean. It was created by doctors. It's an oral supplement, not a GLP-1 injectable. The science behind it is impressive. It helps you maintain healthy blood sugar, control your appetite and cravings, and burn fat by converting it to energy. Right now, you can try lean products. Go to takelean.com. Get 20% off using the code TWOWAY. Takelean.com. Take a look at the products, help you lose weight a natural way, and keep it off safely. That's code TWOWAY at takelean.com. Hogan, you didn't need to listen to that. You could just daydream. Michael, I'm not saying you need it now, but some point.
Oh no, I know.
Point in your life,
I know Hogan's regimen and the muscle milks he kept in his office. I get it.
All right, let's go to your questions now. If you want to ask Hogan about weight loss, you can. You can ask about Charlie, whatever you want. Barry, welcome in. Thank you for being part of Two Way. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for Hogan and for Michael, and thank you for being here.
Hi, I am in Washington State, a little outside of Seattle. I have so much on my mind, and I've been sitting here like, what is the heart of the matter, and where am I right now? And I think what I keep coming back to, and then I did have a comment too, where are we with the First Amendment? Who is the arbiter? Who decides what is free speech? And it boils down to that for me. That's where I'm so in my head about that right now.
Yeah, you're talking about controlling stuff on social media. Is that the issue?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I watched a video this weekend, and it was from a Microsoft employee who got fired for his comments on Blue Sky. He had started the DEI program at Microsoft. He was very upset. He stood by what he said on social media. Someone saw it, someone reported him, and he was upset that he got fired over it. And I don't agree with what he said, but then I'm just like, who is the arbiter? Who decides? Who decides who gets to go into whose life and say, that was hate speech, that was wrong, that was...
Well, I will say this, and then I'll turn it over to Michael and then Hogan. For about 2 decades, the left said they get to decide.
Yeah.
So now the right's making its own decisions, and it's really up to the employers, right? But I think people in the press and on the left who are outraged about what's happening now should do a pretty big catalog of what happened for the last 20 years or so. Hogan.
No, go Michael first.
Okay, Michael.
No, I saw there was a professor, I think, at the University of Miami, I think at the University of Michigan. There were a couple instances at the Washington Post example. I'm for these private companies and private institutions, deciding who is violating, sort of their value set of their business. And so that's where I stand. I mean, like I'm fine when I want private companies to decide for themselves what is the best reflection of either the company's mission or values. And so that's how I see it.
Okay. Hogan.
Yeah, Michael's right. I mean, the private company has the ability to do that. There's no question. I do think there's some more significant things we should be talking about as relates to where this mentality starts or how it develops, that just because you disagree with me, what you're saying is hateful or what, it could be wrong. It could be, hurtful even, but you still have the ability to say it in this country. But as Michael pointed out, if you're saying these things and it violates a rule of your own company, then that's no different than violating a dress code of your own company or conduct unbecoming of a an employee at this company, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's an interesting question the way you ask it, because who decides? I think we all have our own internal mechanisms where we say, that's right, that's wrong, I don't like that, I don't like this. But I do feel like a majority, at least a large number of people out there go, okay, I don't like the way that was said or what was said, but they have the right to say it. But as it relates to businesses, as Michael said, I mean, if you have employees and they're violating your code of conduct, you have the right to fire them, no question.
I will say this. I would like employers to be consistent. And sometimes it's difficult to be consistent, but that'd be
Sure.
best. Barry, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Tammy, Patty, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind.
Hi, I'm Patty. I'm from Oakland, California, and it's just been such an upsetting last week, and I cannot for the life of me understand how each side cannot see that they are responsible. Both sides are responsible, and we have to stop blaming each other. I just can't understand it. I have my brother on the left, I have friends on the right, and it's literally like you cannot talk to them, you can't reason with them, and just like we saw in two-way. Mark, you are so Team America and just so obviously for Team America, and that people still can't hear it on this channel where people have, committed to doing peace, love, and understanding. I don't know how, if we can't do this here, that there's really any hope. And
Yeah.
there is absolutely, though, a very radical trans community. I don't know if it's the same as the anarchist community that we have here in the Bay Area, but they really are violent. They are unhinged. And I have no idea what to do about it,
Yeah.
but maybe, is there any way that social media companies can be held accountable for their algorithms? And maybe if they switch that, we'll stop just hearing our side.
Yeah. Okay. A couple things, and then Hogan, and then Michael. First of all, I appreciate what you said. The vast majority of people on this platform really are interested in all sides. That's why they're here. We are subject to the same thing that our society is subject to, which is the loudest, angriest voices get the most attention because they're loud and angry. I don't understand. I have the same concerns you do. And I'll say again, not everything's equivalent. There's asymmetries here, but no one has clean hands on this, on anything. It just don't. Second, Patty, I'm going to unmute you because I want to know, when you say there's violent trans communities, are you reading about that online? Are you seeing that in your neighborhood? Where are you seeing that?
Yeah, no, we have it here in Oakland. We see it in our city council meetings. They just When I say violent, they haven't yet resorted to violence, but it's only a matter of time. Like we have seen this, escalating since October 7th, most specifically.
Yeah. Hogan,
Like this morning there was on the highway on ramp, like a Jewish store with a swastika in it, and they're not stopping. I know.
yeah. Hogan, question for Patty or statement?
Well, let me just say, I think the trans community you just point out, Patty, is a fascinating kind of study the last several shootings, for example. But also, when you as a group are under the assumption or the false premise or idea that just simply disagreeing with the ability for a man to become a woman somehow endangers your very existence or your livelihood, then you would stand to reason that the lashing out or the violence, as you said, that hasn't happened, that is only a matter of time, makes some sense, because they're under this weird thought that just because I don't agree with what they are doing, or I trust science that they can't change their gender, that somehow I'm a threat to them. So what do you do with threats? So it's fascinating. But you're in California, you said, is that right? Oakland? Okay. Do you see this problem as you're using trans because you brought that up? Do you see that kind of in just that trans community? Are there other pockets or groups of people you see this same type of fear? You have the same type of fear that violence will occur from, or just trans community?
Yeah, there are other far left groups here. There's a city council meeting tonight in Berkeley for their Peace and Justice Committee, and they want to have a sister city with Gaza. Yeah, I mean, these people, like, you can't speak honestly to them because they are so programmed into whatever they've been led to believe that I just don't see how you go forward.
Okay,
Michael.
thank you.
Well, real quick on the trans thing, I find it fascinating as well. I'm struggling to understand it, and I want to learn more about the roots. But it's important to remember, though, the shooter was not trans himself. That he was not undergoing, any therapies or biological stuff, as far as we know. But that said, I do want to learn more about the science. I want to hear from medical experts the same way I want to hear about the science and the medical experts about COVID. I think we have to be consistent. If we're going to trust science, let's trust science and the experts and the medical field. And back to the social media companies, I think we got to be careful there too. I don't want to punish private companies I don't want to overregulate media companies. I think that accountability, again, I think it's going to come down to Section 240. I believe it is Section 242. But I think it's a balancing act, one that I'm reluctant to go down when government gets involved in sort of regulating content from private companies.
Yep. Patty, thank you. Anthony, welcome in.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Hogan. I want to say that, like I think you've heard I've said, Mark, as someone who's an independent, I myself was very upset by the death of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, along with several other people, were one of the people that brought me into politics when I was 15 in 2019. And I didn't follow him for a while, not because I hated him, but because I just didn't have the time. And I am sickened and disgusted by some people on the left that have celebrated this. And even as someone who's not MAGA or Trump supporter, I prayed for the family of Charlie Kirk yesterday. My church has. I don't know anyone on my Instagram page, and I know friends of mine from across the political spectrum, that I didn't see anyone celebrating it. And that's what gave me hope. I have trans friends of mine that condemn this wholeheartedly, that did not support any of this stuff. And I just want to say that, I hope that people listen to Charlie's message, because Charlie in many ways was a buffer to the far right, like Nick Fuentes Andrew Tate. Those are the people I'm worried about trying to take Charlie's place, because Charlie Kirk routinely spoke out against those people.
And Anthony, brilliant. Let's guys respond. That's brilliant. I love what you said. You speak for tens of millions. Hogan.
Anthony, that's well said. Thank you for saying it. And I appreciate someone like you who's willing to just take it all in on both sides, regardless, form your own opinions, and that's fine. You can go about your day like the way it should be in this country. There is not a chance that the two aforementioned, Fuentes or Tate, is going to take over Charlie Kirk's empire. There's not a chance. And I don't mean that formally. I mean like on their own. No way. Those two things were diametrically opposed in so many different ways. The people who knew Charlie Kirk, the people who knew the movement, understood and still understand to this day what it means, what it's for, what it's about, what its future is. And it is not found in the two men you just mentioned. So do not worry about that.
Thank you, Anthony. Michael.
Nothing really to add except that I'm impressed by your story and your motivation and inspiration to get involved. And I enjoyed hearing that stuff that I didn't know, that you thought of him as a buffer to some of the excesses and extremes. And
Anthony, do you remember how you found Charlie? Was it online?
Yeah, it was back in 2019. I was following Young Turks, Ben Shapiro, a bunch of other people. I didn't agree with everything Charlie Kirk said, but I found him to be very inspirational. And I didn't necessarily agree with everything he said. I agreed with some of his things about, the struggles of young men. And the rhetoric about Trump, and like I've said this before on here, that I really don't like the Democrats calling Trump Hitler or authoritarian or fascist or whatever, because what it does, it puts me at a position where I don't believe that. Okay, yeah, Trump does things I don't agree with, but Hogan knows who Trump is, and I think Hogan would be able to tell Trump's not any of those things.
Correct.
Trump has Jewish grandchildren, so calling Trump Hitler doesn't make any sense. And people on the left need to stop, because I'm getting this close to just supporting Marco Rubio for 28 at this point.
Very grateful to you, Anthony. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for being part of Two Way. Gentlemen, in our final moments, I want to ask you a question we talked about in the morning meeting, which is how much potential does this have to be a big factor in the midterms because of organization and fundraising and passion for the Republican Party, for the conservative movement, for MAGA? Hogan.
Huge. And I don't think it can be overstated. What he has built with an army of young people who now know how to operate the mechanics of politics, the non-sexy parts, the get out the votes, the door knocking. That's what you do to mobilize a movement. Charlie built that, he created that, and because you're going to see an influx of people now joining up and being a part of it, the college campuses are going to explode with this brand of conservatism, and they'll be involved for sure. And you need people like Charlie in order to win elections. That's what it takes. Donald Trump understood that. He knew that. He credits Charlie for a lot of that. So I think it only gets bigger for our side. That quite frankly has been woefully behind the Democrats on this for decades.
Michael, at the RNC, after the Dobbs decision, they had a lot of meetings to say, how are we going to deal with this? How are we going to deal with the politics of this? And amongst the things they did was President Trump worked very hard to talk about abortion in a way to try to take the edge off of it. How could, if you're over at the DNC and they say this looks like it's going to be a factor, what can the DNC do to try to take the edge off the possibility of the fundraising, the energy, the organization of this, if anything?
I don't know. I don't know if you can. I think that these midterms are completely different ballgame than a national election, because we're not comparing the strengths and weaknesses of two personalities. It's going to come down to 55 to 65 different races, and who best reflects those particular communities. What I would hope that the DNC is doing is promoting more support of law enforcement, and just communicating the opposition to violence, no matter what team you're on. And but it's a good question in how this mobilizes next year. With the math the way it is, Democrats have a mathematical edge, but I'm interested to see if the energy that you suggest could be sustained because there's so many news cycles from now, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Very grateful to Michael and Hogan and Aaron from earlier, and all of you be part of the two-way community. Thank you guys. Hope you'll come back soon. Thanks to everybody. I am off the morning meeting tomorrow because I've got a two-way commitment unrelated to the program. So don't panic. Sean and Dan will guide you through that. And then I'll see you in 23 hours right here on Two-Way Tonight tomorrow evening. Thank you for being part of this, and have a good night.